Good evening, everyone. My name is Maggie, and on behalf of Book Soup, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for our virtual event with Caroline Kepnes in conversation with Mary Kubica discussing You Love Me. We're so excited and grateful that our bookstore can continue to bring authors and their works to our community during this time. We'll be hosting more virtual events in the near future, and you can learn about them on our website, booksoup.com, as well as our social media at BookSoup. Our next event is tomorrow, April 9th, with Bob Crew. Bob Crew's Sight and Sound Compositions in Music and Art. For regular updates on upcoming events, you can feel free to subscribe to our email newsletter, which you can do on our website. To submit a question during the event, please use the Ask a Question button at the bottom of the screen. If you see a question on the list that you'd like our speakers to answer, please click the like button. We will try to answer as many questions as time will allow. Please do not use the sidebar to ask a question. Also, support our bookstore and purchase a copy of our tonight's featured book. Just click the green purchase button that reads You Love Me directly below the viewer screen. The link will redirect you to our website where you can continue your checkout process. We're selling digital audiobooks and ebooks through Libro.fm and Kobo for those who are interested. A little more about Caroline. Caroline is a New York Times bestselling author of You, Hidden Bodies, Providence, and You Love Me. Her work has been translated into a multitude of languages and inspired a television series adaptation of You currently on Netflix. Kepnes graduated from Brown University and then worked as a pop culture journalist for Entertainment Weekly and a TV writer for Seventh Heaven and The Secret Life of the American Teenager. A little more about Mary. Mary is the New York Times and USA bestselling author of 6 novels, including The Good Girl, Pretty Baby, Don't You Cry, Every Last Lie, When the Lights Go Out, and The Other Misses. Mary's novels have been translated into over 30 languages and have sold over 2 million copies worldwide. Without further ado, I'm going to turn the camera over to Caroline and Mary. Enjoy the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello. I'm so excited to be here with you today, Caroline. I feel like we've been planning for this for weeks, over a month maybe, and I've been like counting down the days, and it's finally here.
Since 2014, I've been like, I want to meet you in person, but we'll take this. Yes.
I know, right? If this is the best we can do, like this will work. But next year, hopefully in person,
yes.
It'll happen. So I'm so excited to talk about your brilliant new book, You Love Me. And I think we're going to start. You're going to read a little bit for us, and then we're going to dive into talking, spoiler-free conversation about the book and about writing. And I'm so excited. But you want to start by sharing a few pages with us?
Yeah, a little something. Yes, not too much. And to set it up, this is You Love Me. This is Joe Goldberg going for a jog. And there's a woman he's interested in named Mary Kay. And she has a daughter that he calls the Meerkat. And I don't think that there are spoilers here, but if you want to go in like not having heard a word, then you can mute and you'll be able to tell when I'm not reading, right? I'm no botanist, but I think there might be poison ivy where I am. So to be safe, I moved to another tree. You're used to the people in the woods, on the trails, and you don't flinch at the leaves crunching beneath my feet. I can hear you now. You don't know what to make for dinner. You have salmon steaks in the freezer, but they're frostbitten. You need a new freezer. You need to see my freezer. And now you're back to counseling Melinda. Don't text him. You know how it is if he likes you, he'll text you. And if he doesn't like you, it's his loss. She's arguing. Can't hear her. Don't need to hear her. And the Meerkat is in the kitchen, slamming cabinets, annoyed. You ask Melinda to hold on, and you turn your head. Know me, honey, do you want salmon? Ugh, do I ever want salmon? It's like 100 years old. And before you say no, I don't want Mexican chicken. You laugh. You're sick of your own chicken too, and sigh. Oh, to be a mother and cook every day for thousands of days and be tired of your own Mexican chicken. The Meerkat slams another cabinet. Can we go out and cook on the grill? Well, I guess so, Nomi. Are you hungry? The Meerkat shrugs, whatever, and she grabs a bag of Tostitos and stomps off to her room. You go back to Melinda, and I feel for Melinda, who's probably contemplating a singleton cauliflower pizza. Sorry, you say to your daughter. I'm out back. You get a text, and you read the text. And you respond to the text. And is it the man who drank that domestic beer on your end table? You're still counseling Melinda, but what about us? When is it your turn to tell her about the best kiss of your life? And seriously, who drank that fucking beer? The acid is cooling in my thighs, but it's burning in my heart, and you shiver and you stand. You go into the kitchen and you close the screen door. You close the slider and it squeaks. You need WD-40. And I can't bear the silence, so I put on my headphones. Sam Cooke tries to comfort me, but he's wasting his time. I touch my fingers to my toes, and the blood rushes to my head, and my headphones cancel the noise of the world, but they can't silence the alarm in my limbic system, the one that dings now. Goosebumps crop up on my arms and my legs, and the hairs on the back of my neck stand up straight. So many tiny soldiers, fight or flight. Slowly, I lift my head, and the alarm in my brain was right. Someone is here, 3 feet away, armed with a backpack and a cell phone, and the 2 most dangerous weapons in these woods, eyes, blinking beneath unflattering round glasses. It's your daughter, the meerkat.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love it so much. And I love hearing you read it even more. That was so exciting. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Santino Montana does the audiobooks. He does a good job. So in the back of my head, I'm like, yeah, he does it too.
It's hard to compete with those audiobook narrators, right? They're the pros, but hearing an author read their own words is so exciting. So that was incredible. Thank you for sharing that with us. So if that hasn't convinced all of you to run out and buy the book, if you haven't already, I wanted to share just a couple words of praise that Caroline received for You Love Me. Paula Hawkins calls it fiendish, fast-paced, and very funny. I completely agree. Catherine Stedman says it's completely addictive, razor-sharp writing. Jessica Knoll says, Caroline Kepnes is that peerless author who makes me laugh and glance over my shoulder on the very same page. And I completely agree. This book is all of those things. I mean, you captured our hearts with You back in 2013, and you have just been getting better and better with every single book. So your readers are in for a treat. So I was thinking, you want to tell us a little bit about the latest book? Tell us a little bit about, maybe without spoilers, of course, but just, what new characters maybe we're going to meet in the book, or, Joe has moved. So we have a location change here if you want to talk about that.
Well, I first want to say that Mary's next one coming up, I got to read it early. I'm so happy. And speaking of glancing over the shoulder, yeah, that's where I wanted to read that part, because I'm like, you have me glancing, like I get in my car at night and I can't stop looking in the rearview mirror. So well done to you, right back.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And this time around, I wanted to, the Hidden Bodies ended many years ago. Thank you for waiting. With Joe thinking he's about to have a wife and a daughter and this wealthy family supporting them. And I wanted to take a lot of that away so that when we meet up with him again, he is up north on Bainbridge Island, feeling like he is still entitled to those things. And he has found the woman who he thinks is really meant to be the source of all that, right? Mary Kay, a librarian. And in normal life, when we meet someone and we meet their friends and family, we get along, we make the adjustment. Joe, he does not. He has issues with the people in her life, and he thinks he's coming from a place of love, and he acts for good reasons and does bad things. But he has new constraints this time around where he doesn't trust the justice system, on the one hand, because, hey, he's a free man. And on the other hand, he has a situation with the family that will not help him anymore. So.
And Joe is just, I mean, I think that Joe is probably one of the most interesting characters that I have ever read in any book. And we were talking about this a little bit before we came on tonight, but I know that I'm not alone in saying that I adore Joe. I just cannot get enough Joe. And he's creepy, and he's completely diabolical, and he does these awful, awful things. And I'm rooting for him. I'm thinking, don't get caught. And, and I find myself drawn to him over, the other characters in the book. And how do you do this?
It's such a good thing to hear you say, because I remember when I started writing and, I'd talk to your friends and say, oh my God, Joe did this, this wonderful thing. And the next day I'm like, oh my God, I just wrote this murder scene. And they're like, wait a minute, I thought you were writing about a nice guy. I'm like, I am, but that's the point, that he's hiding all of this. And that's the game that I like playing in my head all the time. Like, how do I stay kind of rooting for him and kind of questioning myself for that and help him feel real, so that he meets people that would irritate you probably in real life. Yes. I'm very excited about his new friends, Phil and Melanda and Seamus. And it's fun to think of what would bother him the most, and what would also remind the reader of moments in life when they felt a little tied in by people.
Yeah, because we all have these people in our lives that just kind of like grate on our nerves a little bit. And that's what a lot of these other characters aside from Joe do, and so I think what you're saying is it's spot on, just that we can, I think, empathize with Joe more because we know these people, or some version of these people in our real lives.
And it absolutely comes from that social media thing of like, without meaning to, we all have this voyeuristic side that we're allowed to access without telling anyone. Like you can go on and look at people, they don't know you're looking at them. So that's what got me going several years ago, that like what this does to us, just having it, even if you're a person who's not on it at all, it's there. So you're still making the decision to either participate or not. And it all creeps me out, but it's also wonderful because look at this.
Look what came out of it. So do you ever write a scene where Joe does something that does it creep you out? Or as the author, are you kind of removed or just kind of having fun writing, these crazy things that Joe's doing? Or do you sometimes like feel weirded out after the fact?
I'll feel a little creeped out. I'll also feel aware that like in a draft of this book, I had him do something that I would do. And I had to step back and kind of come to terms with myself. Like, this is him. And he is like more, he's stayed around because he wouldn't do what I would do.
Yeah.
And, yeah. What about you? When you write, like, do you jog at night? Do you like, are you able to leave your house after writing all your books?
I have to say, like, for the as many dark things happen in my book, I'm a chicken,
I scare so easily. Yes.
I turn all the lights on in the house, I double check that all the doors are locked, and I would never go running at night.
Right. Yes.
Alone.
Yeah, I can scare myself. Like I've been like that since I was a little kid. And I feel like I wonder if that's why we're drawn to this, because it feels natural to me to try and scare myself and then talk myself out of it. Like
right. And from behind a computer, it's a very safe spot. We're not doing any of these things in real life. We're just sort of living vicariously through these characters. Mm-hmm. So Hidden Bodies came out in 2016. Is that correct? So it's been 5 years, since we've heard from Joe. So, and in that time, in those 5 years, you wrote Providence, a standalone, which is just so beautiful and brilliant for anybody that hasn't read that one. But you also did, I know, at least one short story, and I think you did an original. And so there were other things in there. So how easy or difficult was it to get back into Joe's head and sort of recreate that character after a little time away? And was there anything that you kind of had to do to get back in Joe's head?
I was very nervous. It's almost like, going to a reunion and you haven't seen someone for a while and you've been thinking about them, but it was such a relief. It's like anything. I feel like it's my favorite writing trick that like, the more you think about writing, sometimes the more you just have to do it and then it was like, okay, I'm in it. But yes. And in the past few years to have the show on Lifetime and then go to Netflix. So then there's this physical embodiment of Joe, this person out in the world and everyone watching that. And that was a tricky thing as well, because this was, for me, I was always writing about how Joe sees things. How like he's telling you the story, he's the narrator. So if he says he's Mr. Hot Stuff, like he is, and for all it's like the way that we talk to ourselves and talk ourselves up and rationalize things. So it's been crazy to watch that on top of the break from him. But I did want the break, and I'm so grateful for readers. Like it's been so amazing this week to hear people like can feel the excitement of being back with them and opening the pages and going in there. And so it's
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because I know for myself, I've been missing Joe these last 5 years.
I'm so happy.
To just be able to sink back into that world. And I don't know about yourself or other people out there, but it's been hard to read during COVID. And just to really have that attention span. And but the minute You Love Me arrived in my mailbox, I like, everybody out of my way, I'm going to read. And I just lost myself in the book. It was just, it was so transporting, and it was so good to just, forget about all the craziness that's going on in the world right now, enjoying Joe's crazy world for a little while.
Yes. And like I was doing my last revisions last year during the pandemic, the first like 6 months or so. And it was so nice to have that book to go back into. For me, I'm like, I'm in my head, like we're all going nuts. I'm like scrubbing groceries and, doing all the things that we're all doing. And then my escape is him. And I'm like, oh, like, I'll take it. Like it's a different kind of crazy.
For sure. And there just has to be so much, Joe's familiar, to you. There just has to be so much comfort in revisiting a character like that. So that makes me want to ask, now that you have Providence too, and you've done the standalone, and how do you have a preference when it comes to writing a standalone or writing a series, and just kind of how do you approach them, or what are some of the pros and cons for you?
There's the pro is that I feel like I'm a stage 12,000 clinger when it comes to this character, when I get attached to this voice, and it's absolutely like an addictive thing where doing it makes me want to do more and so on. And then when like writing a standalone after that was scary. And I remember I'd like read, I'm like, oh, how you build the world so well in your books. And then you leave them and then you build another world. And I was like saying to myself, like, yes, I'm going to make new little people to play with, new friends, and then I'm going to put them away. But yeah, it's such different processes, because also in my books, in both of our books, when you know someone's going to die, and then you like writing this character, and then they're dead. It's like, but I think of it also is it's kind of his survival story, and maybe that's part of the appeal and where it feels at home, because you're with someone who's really just trying to get love, which is what we're all told, and that heals everything. Love is the thing. Love is for everyone. I like that feeling of, but does he deserve it? Is he capable of it? Yeah. So it's fun to like ask more questions and never get the answers from me.
Right. Yeah. Right. And Joe is almost like a success story, because as you said at the end of my books, like everybody dies. Not everybody, but a lot of people die. They think that those books could not continue. I have either killed off or traumatized the characters so much that it's time to let them go and move on.
Yeah. And like when you're writing multiple perspectives, like in this book and also, and in the other misses, I've talked to you about Mouse a lot. Do you write one character's perspective at a time, or within a day will you go from one to the other?
So no, so I write one character's perspective at a time. So, I'll write like in the new book coming out, there's a character named Meredith. So, I wrote all of her storyline, and then I jumped back and did another one. And it just, I feel like it can just get in that character's head. I can kind of be one with them, and it keeps the voice hopefully authentic. I really think that if I was bouncing back and forth from chapter to chapter with different characters, that it would all sort of like sound like me at the end, and they wouldn't be incredibly authentic. So that's why I do it that way. Do you write linearly, or do you find yourself jumping around at all when you write?
I feel like I think about the end a lot, and then I get in and I just go with the addictive feeling. And I know I hear that inner editor that's like, this doesn't work, but I'm like, oh, I feel like going. Like I feel like a few extra 100 pages. Like I'm just one of those rewriters. So I'll make a whole draft and then be like, oh, maybe 10 pages of this will be in here. But I had fun doing it. Like I love writing him. And in that way, I'm like, I think I'm also subconsciously trying to make more work for myself, because I'll let it go off. Like there's a scene in the diner scene when they're talking about Succession, and I want that. I was like, this is going to be like 50 pages, and I know it can't be, but I feel like it's a good way to get to know the characters and to let them kind of go off. And
yeah, totally. And sometimes that writing is a way that you get, the story develops that way, and you get to know the characters. And even if it ends up coming out at the end of the day, I always feel like it's a good experience for the writer, and it makes the book just stronger, even if those words and pages end up being deleted.
Yes, and how they're all connected. Like it's always a puzzle. I remember feeling like, oh, I'm figuring out things about Oliver that are making me understand things about Phil, and I'm excited to go back to every Phil part and like play with it. I love that tinkering that we go through. That's
For sure. So I'm not no spoilers, but this is like the twists in this book are just incredibly mind blowing. Like just incredible things happen, bonkers things happen in the very best way in this book. And your readers will like have to pick their chin up off the floor when this is done. But how much of that did you know? Do you plot your books out, or do you just start writing and see where the story leads?
It's a little bit of both, like somewhere in the middle. I'm plotting, like thinking, and then that often turns into writing. So I'll surprise myself, like I'll have a plan and then change it. But I also think a lot about the emotions. Like I start out with like, what do I want to see? What haven't we seen him? Like, what would make him really upset? What would really get him fired up? What would really like put him over the edge? And what would also make him feel loved? Like I love, and then going from there and then, building it. But yeah, it's somewhere in the middle. But the ending is always like first for me, like in the plot way of like, now I have to earn it and figure out. Yeah. And I write things that I feel like make no sense. And my editor's like, you can leave it. And then 8 months later, I'm like, oh, I know why I did that.
I get it now.
Part of your brain is ahead of the other part, you know?
Yeah.
And that's when I say, Joe's fucking with me. Like, yes.
Well, and do you feel like that? Do you feel like Joe is the one writing this book sometimes?
Yeah, I like those writing days are fun. Like, of course, when it feels like you're in old school, like you're in flow and just lost in there and this channeling and all that. And then there are the days of like, oh no, like all that channeling that felt so good. Now I'm going to work on it. It's like, it's like I love each part of it. And I feel like that's the only way to get the book done, right? To like, I love when it's in flow and I love when I'm up Schitt's Creek.
Absolutely. Like, because I think that those days, I mean, as much as I hate them when I'm in the moment, but I feel like sometimes those words that you have to fight the hardest for, or, you know, just like those twists that don't come easily, those are the best.
Yes. And then for me, that I'm just like a later writer where I feel like I love when there's a draft. It's kind of like when you build the playhouse and then you get to play in it. And the more time I spend in it, the more I'm like, oh, I want to go back to this specific part when you're doing surgery. And I think of that game Operation, you know, and you're just picking.
For sure. Totally. So we talked a little bit about social media a few minutes ago, but I want to go back to it. So you know, came out 2013. So it's, I can't do the math. 9 years, 8 years?
Yeah. 14, 7. I know math. I get like, yeah. Someone's like, how long did it take? I'm like, a year. I look over. I'm like, wait a minute. No, it's more like 2 years. Like, I feel like I math. I don't know. Calendar.
I know. It's just, it doesn't work. It doesn't work in this brain of mine. So social media, I mean, social media is a huge part of this book, you know, and it's how Joe does so much of his stalking. And, you know, now that I have 2 teenagers myself, and so I think that I'm more aware of social media and just, you know, how dangerous it can be. And, you know, like I know my daughter has Snapchat, and I know that, you know, people can turn their locations on Snapchat and all their friends can know where they are. And, you know, there are just so many ways to stalk people online these days. But how has that changed? I mean, I suppose like in some ways it's helped. I mean, it has helped Joe do more worse things because the technology has changed over all these years.
Right. It has changed so much. Like yesterday, Rachel True said something good. She said that social media is the other character in the books. I'm like, oh, thank you. That's where I love writers. Like I'm never as good at talking about the book as I feel like other people are. And yes, when I think of back then, it was already scary to me. And now it's all so much more than it was. And then you have to like, do you have access to your kids' phones? Or like, how do you even navigate like deciding their privacy with the world, your privacy with them? Like, it's so confusing.
It's so hard, you know, and it was easier when they were younger, but now my daughter is 15, she's in high school, you know, and there's a line there. I don't want to,
yeah.
You know, I want to make sure she's safe, but I also don't want to intrude on her privacy, you know, and so finding that line is really difficult. And I mean, you know, just all the things that you hear about social media, it is a scary, scary place. And which I think is why, you know, Joe makes it look so easy to stalk people.
Yes.
You know, you go on Instagram, you know exactly where somebody is, who they're hanging out with, you know everything about these people just from looking at what they post online.
That's what scared me so much. And with every book, it's just so fun for me to have him go on there and know everything. Because I'm like, I'll sit in a coffee shop and write, and someone's sitting next to me, and I'll overhear. And within 20 minutes, I know everything. Yeah. And I also know what I think of everything and what I think that they're actually doing and what they're hiding and all of that. I'm like, you little sicko. Like, so yeah, I'm like, imagine if someone was a psychopath, sociopath type doing this. Like, that's what scares me. But it's also so on the normal level, like an example of something I really wanted him to deal with in this book was like insta stalking someone in a way that hurt his feelings. Yeah. Without getting into too much of it, but like the way that it can also hurt us. Like I like to show him suffer like a normal, well-adjusted person, and maybe feel a little sorry for him for a minute there, and then oops.
What am I thinking? How all those years ago did you dream up Joe? You know, what was that first kind of spark of an idea?
It was, I mean, I lost my father after 2 years. He was very sick. He was very like very funny, loud, everything out of his mouth we called a Kepnesism. And I'm lucky I have great parents, and my family, like, it was just such an awful loss. Like, there are no words. Yeah. And after that loss, the strange thing for me was that realization they're never calling again. And I feel like that was a lot of what The End of You was about, was that like the goneness where you have your memories, but that they're not reaching out like that. And I was like, okay, like I wrote not a terrible script, but I wrote a script about caregiving and nurses, and like helping someone. And that was too close to home. And I was in a bad mood. And then I just thought about the way I'm fighting with my own sadness, my own bitterness. Like, I want to fight with someone else. So I made them up. Like, I was in a Starbucks in a bad mood, and I felt this like kind of that voice, and I went with it. And it was a lot of work, but it was absolutely this need to have this new voice, this new guy to play with.
Yeah, well, that's incredible. And your story, I'm so sorry that
it always also feels weird to bring it up, like.
Right, but the fact that something so brilliant has come from that tragedy, that's definitely, that's remarkable. And oh boy, thank you for sharing that with us. Let's talk about the TV show for a little bit. I'm sure that many people want to talk about that. And before I forget, be sure, if you have any questions for Caroline, be putting them down there in that Ask a Question. I see that we have some down there that we'll get to in a few minutes, but be sure if you have any questions that you're putting them down there in that little box.
Yeah.
So the TV show. So how, what does it feel like to have your work on this super successful TV show that millions of people watch?
It's so wild to have it be the source of, like, I think of it as a book club on crack, where the showrunners read the book years ago, the first book, like loved it, wanted to do it. And, it's a long process, like, with your adaptations. And to see it grow to this level is wild. It's when we were on Lifetime, there were every step of it. I'm like, I can't get over it. I feel like I've said that 8 million times. Like, it's wild. And then on that basic writing level, like, I felt so lucky in 2014 that I had wildly awesome readers who were just so fired up, so connected to this character, like, made me feel so good and like happy to see this become something for them to play with. And it's crazy to have a show come out and develop its own fandom of meme making obsessives. What is Joe's sign people? Like, it's just, it's incredible.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. The show is amazing. And, just to sit down and watch it and think, I can't even imagine what that would be like for you to sit there and watch it and think, I dreamed this up, that this came out of my mind.
And the dream weaving of it, it's so nice. Like, some of those actors in the first season where it was their first big thing. I just love that. Like, it was my first book. It was a lot of the way in for other people. It's just, yeah. I just feel like it makes me feel very sweet and happy. And then I turn around and write these dark, sick things. So I'm like, those are the things that make people sweet and happy and feel satisfied watching. So
yeah, so good. And it seems, I follow you on social media, and
I follow you.
Stalk you on social media.
That was where, when I wrote, I was like, when I was reaching out to you about the book, I'm like, oh, it just feels so good begging for something, but I got it.
But I know, you've been, you post pictures of yourself with the cast, and today you shared, I think it was on Instagram, John Stamos getting his COVID vaccine, and he's talking to people, and he's saying that he's going to text you because they're watching you and loving it. And it just seems like such an awesome, really close group of people that are involved in it.
And it's just wild. I feel like when you make something, it's like, you don't know what's going to happen, and you don't know if anyone's going to watch it, read it. And when I feel like I have the best readers, and then the show has this enormous like following, it's a lot of good.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that video made me laugh. Yeah. It's got to be funny. It's like.
And so sometimes, as books on Hollywood do, they don't all line up perfectly. Sometimes the show goes off in different direction than the book might. So how do you feel about this? Does this bother you, or is it just part of the way it goes?
I feel like, look, right, like when I read your books and they're all coming soon, I hope very soon to Netflix and other places, of course you want every single page to be on the screen. Like, you want that. It's just, but for me, that's reading. Like, so much of reading is about your interaction with the page, with the story, and, what you're doing with it in your head. And for me, like, when I finish a book, I'm finished, it's for the world. So when they want to adapt a book, I'm like, I made a book, you're making a TV show, and these are different things. Yeah. And I feel like the mediums are different. And also, like, having written for television, and I made a short film where I adapted a short story that I wrote, and I changed so much, and I had complete control. And I was constantly surprised by myself, like, oh, like, I thought I was going to take the story and ounce for ounce go right in. But I feel like creative people want to create, you know, and it's natural to me.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
It's two totally different experiences, like you're saying, watching something on TV versus reading a book. And so you have to adapt, and you have to adapt to your audience. And so that makes perfect sense. So when the first 2 seasons of You came out, you already had You and Hidden Bodies done, right?
Mm-hmm.
So with this one, you know, you're writing the 3rd book, knowing that it's going to go to TV. Is that how different? I mean, it's obviously a different experience, but how does that affect you, or does it affect you as a writer?
I feel like it doesn't, like it does, of course, like with those moments of pressure. But I think always as a writer, like you never get that first book moment back where you have no idea, you know, if it like, and also before You, like I'd written other books that aren't published and written so many short stories. And it's like, ultimately you get past whatever you're using in your life as to procrastinate, to like make yourself nervous and kind of crack your knuckles and go in there, because there's no choice. It would be like, I could sit here and like think about the pen of it all and the difference, like the way Joe on screen is different than in the book. Or I could like focus on the book, on where I left off in Hidden Bodies, and kind of immerse myself in that world and go over the years of notes I have and kind of go in and go to work. I'm like, everything else is kind of procrastination. Like, I'm like, you know.
Yeah, totally. It just takes you away, takes your mind out of writing that next book.
Yeah, and reminding myself, that I'm writing the inside of the head. Like on the show, you're watching him, but I went into this to try and capture the inside of this nut's head. So I'm like, that's my job. Yes.
You do an awesome job at it. Will there be? Can you tell us? Are you working on another Joe book? Will we hear from Joe again?
I'm working on it. I'm at the scary place with like the draft done. We're already, speaking of social media, a few months ago, I did one of my it's done things. Do you know that moment when you think it's done? And then when people bring it up, I'm like, oh no, you know that like that was a draft. Like, yeah, that's it. But I'm like, that's the thing that's a private moment that when you put it out publicly raises, like it makes expectations reasonably. And then I feel bad. I'm like, no, actually I have a lot of work to do on it. So he's going, like, it's like, I don't want to say too much because of the way things change, but he is going to kind of try and make up for lost time and get in an honor that he feels he deserves. And you might think he does, you might think he doesn't, but some new friends, some new injustices, yes, and a new love interest.
Oh, of course. Oh, I can't wait to read it. Whenever it's ready, I can't wait to read it. And I know that your readers are dying to read it too.
Which is an amazing thing. Like, hi readers, does that blow your mind when you realize, oh, there are people like waiting for it?
I know it does. Yeah. And it doesn't matter how many books you write, it's just one of those things that you really never get used to. It never gets old.
Yeah. I'm like, that's why this is my favorite week. I'm like, this is the week that people finally, they're sitting there with their book this weekend. They're going to read. Like, that's my favorite part. Like after when we, talk about it, it's here, it's yours. Like,
yeah, absolutely. And this is a question I probably should have opened with, but did you always know you wanted to be a writer, or was this something that
I wanted to be a dancer, but I wanted to be a lot of things. But yeah, I always wrote. Like, I always wanted to tell stories. I liked making things up. When I think of being a kid, I think of being in the backyard, like in the grass, pretending it's the woods with my little dolls, and just like and something bad always happening.
I love it.
And then I had wonderful teachers in high school, and that were just so encouraging and helpful, and writer friends and wonderful parents. Like, I feel like everyone always encouraged me, and that's been invaluable. Did you want to be a writer when you were little?
I loved writing, but I was always very shy, and like the idea of writing things and putting them out there for other people to read terrified me. So I was actually a high school history teacher for many years. But I wrote, I was just writing whenever I had time, but it was always, for me, it was something that I never really imagined the world reading. And then I wrote The Good Girl, and it was the first thing that I finished. And I felt really like I really wanted to see if anything could become of it. Like, I felt like it was something that I just had a lot of faith in it compared to anything that I had written prior. And I put it out there and was lucky enough to get an agent and get published.
Do you hear from a lot of old students who are like, is this me? That kind of thing.
I hear from students. I hear from a lot of teachers. I've been able to go do like book clubs with former high school teachers. And so that's been really cool. Everybody's been so supportive, but yeah. So I'm gonna jump over right now and let's see if I can, if I don't mess this up, and I'm gonna get the reader questions for you. So this is the first one.
I see the comments. Hi. Yeah.
Who do you imagine as an actor to play Melanza? This is from Dawn. Who do you imagine as an actor to play Melanza? Dawn pictures Catherine Hahn personally. What about you?
God, well, she's great. Like I like that idea too. That's actually a very good idea. Are you a casting agent? Yes. But I'm like overall, like I see a lot of people have like mood boards when they're writing, or actors. Like I just go out in the world and I'm like, you're them. Like when I see people. Right.
And you didn't have it with the characters that are already in it, you know, the first couple seasons, you didn't have any part in casting, right?
No, thank God. I mean, I got to like weigh in and say, oh my God, this is a great idea. I got to watch tapes, which is fascinating. I feel like as a writer, just when you get to learn anything, like learning that process. Yeah. And like I was like the guy who played Benji, I remember in his tape, he came in character. Like on his phone and was like, you know, like I'm like, oh my God, like it's Benji, like it's like wild. Yes, and other people, you know, had a different way of doing it. So I like the learning process, and I like the people that do this and know how to do it to have the final say.
Yeah, for sure. But now you did get to write an episode that first season, though. What was that like?
It was, I mean, it's so wild to go back into your work in a new realm, right? Like it's just, yes. It was very wild. And then you're in a room with all the other writers who are very helpful. It's like, it's weird going in because it's like they've been in there for months doing that.
Yeah.
And I'm like the new kid. So it's a very bizarre thing to be like, this is my baby, but this is your baby. It's like, these are different babies.
Totally. Totally. But I just love how involved you've been. And I love, you know, again, with my internet stalking, but I love just like all the pictures that you've posted with the cast. And I think it's the coolest thing. And I just love that you had that opportunity.
Can't wait to see yours.
No,
and thank you, Chris and Rebecca, I just see these comments here that, yes.
Oh, yeah. Joe is the best. Joe is the best, Rebecca.
I don't see him as a bad guy. See, that's what I love. To feel that way.
Yeah. And I feel the exact same. And I think that's why people keep coming back, because I think you have to be in some way rooting for Joe, because otherwise, you know, this guy doing awful things, eventually if you don't have that empathy for him, I think that you're just not going to keep wanting to come back. But readers do, you know, they're so drawn to him and he's so magnetic. And so many of those blurbs that I read earlier talk about just how funny the book is, you know, and so here, and it is.
It's something when someone makes you laugh, they can get away with a lot. Yeah. And it's fiction. And I feel like for me, like everyone I like to read about in fiction, like I would be terrified to go live in one of your books, but I love to read them. But you know what I mean? That's where I feel like, yeah, Joe, and that for me, that's the fun. Like you wouldn't know if you met him in real life, you wouldn't know, but it's fun to get in there.
Right. And that's like, it's a terrifying, but awesome thing to think about, you know, like you don't know the nice guy that lives next door. You don't really know what he's like, you know? Yes. Here comes the question. Well, we talked a little bit about this. This is from Francine. She said she loves your books. And she said, Joe is such a seductive character. Who or what inspired him? And we did talk a little bit about that already.
And I would go into, it's also inspired by like the crazy emotional highs and lows of life. I wanted to like write about someone who lives in that space, who like kind of can play a song and convince himself that someone is in love with him. And who's very good at being his own best friend, his own cheerleader, like all of these qualities that are attractive in a person. I wanted to put them in someone who's also capable of violence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like what if John Cusack can say anything? It's nice when he's holding the boom box, but what if you didn't like him?
Right.
And, yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Let's see here. Christina says, what inspires the titles of your books? That's a great question. What prompted Hidden Bodies in comparison to You Love Me?
So that is a good question. Originally, I wanted, when I was writing You, and I feel like falling in love with it, I was like, 3 books, You Love Me. That's how I want. But when you're writing a book, when publishing a book, already You was a hard book to look for. And the second book, there was also a show coming on that was called Love. So it was like, this is the one word was too, confusing. And the Hidden Bodies, I liked that the kind of inevitability of this, that like we're all going to be buried one day and someone is going to, you know, potentially go see us or not. And I feel like with Joe, it's this constant feeling that he's trying to bury things and he's good at it, like, and better than it that we are, which is what makes him, you know, not good for the world. But I just got lost in my head. But, so You Love Me, I was like, yes, it's time. You love me. And it's like, what? And that's that conviction, like, allows for so much. Like, if you, there's a moment in the book, like, we've all sent texts we don't mean to send, or we're a little drunk, and Joe gets a text, and you know what? Like, he's not wrong when he's like, but you said it. Like, you said something there. And that, for me, was like great drive for him.
Yeah. All he needs is that like little like inspiration, and he's lost, you know?
Yep.
I love titles. It's always fun to know like where the titles come from. And so when you first started, when you wrote the very first book, you envisioned this as a 3-book series?
In that like high creative floating way. When I was having the good day and I was writing at the coffee shop, getting in the car, blasting the Elton John, just like, I'm so happy, I love this, I want to do this forever. Meanwhile, you know, like, who knows if I'm going to finish the book. But it just felt like as I went on, like, oh, I knew that I, like, halfway through I got serious about a second one. And once I had the second one, I was like, oh, You Love Me.
Yeah. Okay, so the next question we have here, and this is, we've talked a little bit about this too. This one is from Rebecca, and it says, how much of a role have you played in developing the You series on Netflix? Did the difference in the series influence You Love Me? And do you like the way the series has gone in a different direction? So we've touched a little bit on that.
Yes, and hi, Rebecca, thank you. It was in the hands of the showrunners, who are going in directions that surprise me and are different. And I go back to like, the books don't change. For me, like, reading a book is such a unique experience every time. So with every adaptation, and I'm very happy that there's another season coming. And I'm very happy that more and more people are reading the books too.
Yeah. Do you know when the 3rd season will begin?
I don't, but I feel like this year, like it's 2021. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Something to look forward to. Okay, let's see. Next question here comes from Chris, and we talked about this one a little bit too. Chris asks, do you have a story in your head for the 4th novel as we continue with Joe? And you do a little bit.
Yes, and it's another one where the ending I think about every day, on and off all day, and I'm still in that, well, why do I want that ending so badly? Like, that's where I feel like a lot of writing is agony, and just like thinking, why can't I get this out of my head? Like, why is that the image that's stuck like that, in a good way, but also in a like overwhelming, like, how are you, like, because when you figure things out, when you get to the end of this book, and I'm like, oh my God, how did I not see that? Like, at what point did you see it?
Yeah, because I rarely know my endings when I write. You know, I feel like I start with like a problem, you know, somebody's gone missing or somebody's dead or whatever. And I sort of I start to investigate it myself a little bit and get to know my characters. And then little by little, that ending, the twists kind of form. But, you know, like with this one, with Local Woman Missing, it came earlier than it usually does. I feel that like there are times that I'm 50% of the way into a book, you know, hitting panic mode. Like, what if this doesn't all ever come together? But sometimes, you know, I just feel like I need to know my story a little bit before I can figure that out. But there's so much comfort when I do, because now I'm like working up to something. Like, I know exactly where I need to go. But I don't know, do you struggle with this, just knowing like how much to reveal to your reader? Because of course we know at a certain point where the book is going. So to find that balance between giving away enough, but not too much.
Yes. Well, I like that process of like, it's almost like a reverse mystery. Like, you're with the guy who's doing all the crime, but he's also cataloging all the crimes that others do. Yeah. So that's where, like, for me, I like that balance of like, people got to do things that upset Joe enough that Joe gets to be active.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's see. I think we just have a couple more questions. So if anybody has more questions, send them along. Dawn says, this is about your short story. How does your short story, how does your short story, Monster from Lullabies for Suffering, compare to the You series in Providence? She said she just found out about the collection today.
Oh God, that collection is so beautiful. There are like, and so many wonderful writers in there. I love collections because it's such a great way to discover writers. And that story is about a teenage boy who is a babysitter and the girl that he babysits for, and their relationship that goes on, and the hardships in both of their lives, and things that are out of their control, and their mothers. And I love that story so much. I love all the stories in that book. And for like, I guess it's similar. It's my style. It's just, it is a dark story, but for me, it has a happy ending. Well, yeah.
Do you write quite a few short stories, right?
I've always loved them. Yeah. Since I was a kid, like it makes me so happy to like get a nugget and know that it's a nugget and finish it, you know?
Right. And you're not doing this for the next year or, couple years, however long it takes to finish a draft of a novel, that it's something you can kind of crank out. And
right. But Monsters was a story that I worked on and off for many years too. Okay. And it was like when Mark, the editor, the author that was doing the collection came along, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna do this now.
Yeah.
Like really do it.
That's awesome. Okay, let's see here. Okay, and then Dion asks, are you planning to write another standalone book anytime soon?
Yes, I am so excited. I have a woman writer named Pearl for you, and I can't wait for you to meet her. And this was a book I worked on after Providence, like during the time between Hidden Bodies. So Providence was published. I wrote maybe 2 drafts of this book about Pearl, but it's put off so that the U-books can come out. Like I feel like that audience is, rabid, and I want to get those out. I wish, that I had 3 hands and 2 brains and I could do them all at once, because I'm very excited about the standalone Pearl. Mm-hmm. And yes.
Oh, I can't wait to read it. I'm so excited now. I love everything that you write. And Providence it's just so different than the U books, and I saw, you can really see just how versatile you are as a writer. It was so different. And I love that, you're just so talented, so capable. And so I'm excited to read this next standalone.
And your imagination. Thank you, Kristen. Blows my mind in the same kind of way. I'm like, you did it again and again, and yet it's so different. And yes, and I'm always fooled. Yeah.
Thank you. So how has writing, revising, how has it all been affected by COVID? And obviously this like releasing a book launch too during COVID. This is,
yes,
you didn't have a book out last year. So this is like kind of the first time that you've had to do it this way. So right. How has COVID kind of affected all things publishing related?
On the plus side, I think it's so cool that when I look at Rebecca, Chris, Christina, Dion, I don't know where you guys are, but we're all here together. And I think that's great, because when you put out a book and you want to go to every town everywhere and see everyone, and you can't, this way, you get to talk to people through this. On the other hand, last night I got into that sad, I miss hugs. I miss signing books with the reader, taking that picture, all of that energy. I miss going to people's events and celebrating their books. I miss that a lot. And the writing, for me, I've already had a great amount of alone time. And this year it was a hard adjustment almost to have more alone time than I necessarily need, which, every day it's I can't do this or that. I think we've all gone through our own unique challenge of adjusting how to do anything that we do. How has it been for you?
Yeah, it's been, I have 2 kids, and they literally just today started back at school 5 days a week. So they had been doing fully remote for almost the whole time. And then maybe 2 months ago, they transitioned to 2 days a week, 2 half days a week at school. So they're home before lunch, which is kind of why bother? I do get the point, but it just is so fast. And so for me, there's a lot of distractions when it comes to writing. And I think just too, I think with authors, people kind of figure, well, we're home anyways, that maybe COVID and the lockdown hasn't affected us, but I don't know, all I have to do is look at Twitter in the morning and, just read all the terrible things that are going on, and my creativity is gone.
Yes. And for me, I used to go out to get that human stimulation. And that was a big part of get a taste of that, maybe overhear a little something, go be in the world, and then want to come home, and then also to print things and go out in the world and write them. It's wild. But,
yeah, there was one day, because I love writing in coffee shops, and I haven't stepped foot in a coffee shop, in
right. And now, can you imagine doing that? I think about things like that. Like I used to sit at bars. I used to sit in a coffee shop with everything, you know.
No, I know. But then sometimes when I really like let myself think, oh, how much I miss sitting and writing in a coffee shop and the ambiance and hearing people. And like you say, overhearing these conversations. And
the casual way of it, that you could go and like and just slip into the world and not necessarily do something, but like, but be in it and soak it in.
Yeah. So do you think COVID, the pandemic, all that will ever play a role in Joe's life? I'm like imagining him with his mask on. You know? I
had to do it. Like I wrote a whole bunch of COVID stuff for U4 that like, I think it's more going to be something that he's reflecting on. Okay. And I don't think that we're not like, I don't know about you guys, but I'm not ready to write that book we're still too in it. And emotionally it's all too raw and here. And like you said, when you're intaking this much grief and sadness, take some time, but I'm going to make like light reference to it. You know, the book, The Boston Girl? Mm-hmm. I love that part in the book when she's like, after the pandemic, we didn't talk about it. We just, like, I remember this summer I was like, like, after, like, and you're not talking, the rest of the book isn't like,
right.
That blew my mind.
Yeah, no, totally. And, you know, I feel the same with you. Like, it's so we're in it now, you know, I think that like after the fact, but right now, you know, I feel like I'm like cautiously optimistic that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, but we're not there yet, you know, and I think that until this is really beyond us that, or that we're beyond it's hard to write about. Cause like you said, it's so raw. It's so
moody. Like I feel so, like when you're able to so easily be upset. Like if you want to get upset, 10,000 ways to find something that will upset you in this really awful, bizarre way.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Okay, I think we had one more question pop in. We can sit in here chat and let me double check.
The mask to hide his face. Yes. It's like that. Yes, that's where the pandemic blew my mind because I'm like, oh my God, the things he could do, the places he could go.
Oh, I know. He could do so much. I mean, Joe would use this to his advantage for sure. This True Heart here says, such a lovely conversation. Could you see Joe going for many, many books as in an older man, as in Joe as an older man? Do you envision ever Joe being an older man?
I love that. I hope so. Like, I love the idea that he's real and that he is getting older. That's something that was fun to deal with in this book, like to remind myself, like, he's a little older in each one. So that is a different mindset. So yes, I love the idea of that. And I feel like that was part of why in the first book, like I wanted Mr. Mooney there to sort of make myself realize that this is kind of the whole point, that like Mr. Mooney survived after he did a lot of terrible things. And I can see Joe surviving a long time too.
Yeah, we can all grow along with Joe. I love that. So unless there are any other questions, I've asked you all of my questions. I loved hearing so much about this book. There at Book Soup, if you haven't already purchased your copy, and Caroline is going in to sign and personalize copies.
So I can write some whatever weird thing you want in there, whatever nice weird thing. Nothing like sending someone a book too that says, "You love me." And they have a lot of local LA authors signed books there. So that's another thing. Go on the website. You can look that up.
Yes. Thank you so much. That's a wrap on our presentation. Thank you again to our guests and to everyone who tuned in this evening. We greatly appreciate everyone's time and support of independent bookstores. Support our bookstore and our authors and purchase a copy of tonight's featured book. Just click the green purchase button that reads "You Love Me" directly below the viewer screen. And yes, they can be inscribed, which is amazing. If you'd like regular updates on our upcoming events, make sure to follow us on Crowdcast and subscribe to our newsletter. Have a great evening and stay safe, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.